Last-minute energy out of Allen Park. The board just sharpened its pencils and circled. A single move that changes how we talk about this deadline. This defensive rotation and the message it sends to the locker room heading into November. I've got the full map for you, and I'll walk you straight through it. What flipped in the trenches over the last few weeks. Why one interior piece suddenly sits at the center of Detroit's phone calls. What a realistic return actually looks like in late October. And how this decision lines up with the identity Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have been building since camp. I'm not dropping the name yet, you'll feel why when we get there, but lock in. Because this is one of those pivots that looks small in the transaction line and ends up echoing through Sunday snaps in December. Here's the heartbeat of it. The defensive line room is healthier, deeper, and more versatile than it's been all season. And when that happens in Detroit's system, roles get ruthlessly defined. You either play a specific job at game speed, or you give the staff the flexibility to keep you as a special teams piece. Or the front office treats you like a chess pawn that can be packaged to buy a proper queen for a playoff push. No hard feelings, just football logic with January ambitions. Over the last 2 weeks, the mix inside has steadied. Allen McNeil back on schedule, a true space setter next to him, a rotational body you can trust to anchor on early downs, and a hybrid depth piece who can cover 3 tech snaps without forcing the staff to shrink the playbook. Add that to the outside juice that's been cultivated snap by snap, and Detroit can finally run its fronts without band-aids. That's the context for what I'm about to say, because deadline math isn't just about talent, it's about fit, roles, and how many helmets you can dress on Sunday without compromising special teams. And that last point is where the story bends. The player I'm talking about doesn't cover kicks and punts. You know how this staff values third-phase contributions from the back end of the roster. If you can't give value there, you need to be either undeniably vital on defense or part of a plan to build something bigger. Right now, with this room full and the roles tightened, we've been seeing a healthy scratch since week 2, not a judgment on character or work ethic, just a scoreboard of the current depth chart. When Campbell talks about it, the message is consistent. The kid can play some 3-tech and knows. He's working, he's improving, and he's one play away from being needed. But the versatility around him, plus the return of Matt, makes the Sunday math brutal. That's the straight line between we like him and we might move him. So, what's the market? Manage expectations. This is not a headline grabber in terms of picks. Think modest value, the kind of late 2026, capital that looks trivial to fans and feels meaningful to a front office stacking options for future maneuvering. Or, and this is the more interesting angle, he becomes the sweetener in a package for a premium need. Especially if Detroit wants to shop for edge heat or a particular pass rush profile to complement what they already have. That's where his pre-draft buzz matters. League guys still see the upside. A compact interior defender with pop. A guy some teams graded higher than where he ultimately went. A mold that fits certain systems, that value big end looks who can slide inward and hold water in the B-gap. Connect the dots, and you'll find obvious landing spots. There's a staff out west that brought him in for a top 30 look and liked what they saw. There's a champion that just added a familiar coordinator from his college days and historically loves mixing and matching hybrids who can play the big end, roll on early downs, and kick inside on pass. When those teams evaluate, they see a cheap contract, controllable years, a workable frame for development, and they bet on their system to iron out the wrinkles. That's a real thing in October. Contenders and near contenders love malleable pieces who are blocked where they are and could pop with a different usage menu. Now let's talk Lions. If you keep him, you're betting on a mid-season injury or on a rotational breakthrough, sparked by practice tape, so obvious the staff reopens snaps in November. There's a version of the season where that happens. This is the NFL. You're always one rolled ankle away from a different depth chart. But keeping him also means accepting a game day crunch, where special teams isn't an outlet and defensive snaps are scarce. which pressures the staff to sit a guy who helps cover kicks just to keep a developmental piece active. That's against Detroit's philosophical grain. If you move him, you're telling the room two things. First, this team is done squinting at roles jobs are defined, and if you don't fit right now, we translate you into capital. Second, we're serious about buying the last piece we need for the front. That could be a stand-up edge who wins the corner with first-step violence, a heavy who compresses pockets on 2nd and 8, or a combo player who lets the staff bluff fronts pre-snap and still play honest gaps. Either way, you maximize the snaps of the guys you trust on Sundays and free a locker for a specialist you know you'll play. The risk? If an injury hits the interior in Week 12 and you've already moved him, you lose a comfort cushion. That's the chess Detroit would be betting that practice squad shuffling and a veteran street pickup can backfill in a pinch. I also want to be clear about return. Fans hear trade and picture a splash. That's not this file. The realistic payoff in a solo move is a low pick. An extra dart for 2026. The upside is when he's the third line of a bigger transaction. The part that unlocks a slightly better player coming back or shaves a future conditional in your favor. That's the art of the deadline in a league where cap windows tighten every season. And there's another layer, the message to the young players. Detroit has built a reputation for development honesty work, improve, be ready. And that's been echoed here. He's practicing hard, the staff sees it, and the door isn't shut. But honesty also means telling a player, you might be better served by snaps somewhere else while we chase what this roster needs right now. That's not cold. That's professional. So yes, I'm finally saying the name because the timing and the logic are aligned. The inside domino on Detroit's deadline board is Mecky Wingo. He's absolutely aligned today. He's been working. The staff values the effort. But the room's versatility has him boxed out on Sundays. And his lack of special teams usage makes the numbers tough. That's why his file sits on top of the phone list, not as a problem, but as an asset that could turn into cap-friendly value or get stapled onto a deal for an edge. And if you're connecting him to specific suitors, keep your eyes on fits that already know his game from college or who brought him in pre-draft. That's not smoke. That's how connections become action at this time of year. Where do I land? I see 3 viable tracks. Track 1. Detroit keeps Wingo as an injury hedge, counting on practice momentum and ready to flip the switch if a mid-season tweak creates an opening. Track 2. A late, low-pick exchange that banks a small future asset and clears a spot for a special teams contributor, tightening Sunday operations. Track 3, the one that makes my football heart beat faster a package where Wingo is the bonus that persuades a team to release a rotational edge with real get-off, giving Detroit one more pitch in obvious passing downs without robbing early down integrity. For a team with January on its breath, Track 3 is the kind of marginal gain that wins a playoff series of downs. And let me address the timeline so nobody gets lost. The NFL trade deadline lands November 4. The bye gives Detroit breathing space to align calls and put the right names on the board. By the time we're back on the field, this decision will either have been made or it will have defined itself by inactivity. That's how narrow the window is. Before I close, I want your take right now. Drop it below and tell me where you stand. If you're Brad Holmes for a day, do you hold Wingo as the emergency interior card, trusting the room's health and counting on development snaps later? Or do you flip him straight or in a package to buy the edge trait? This defense is still chasing when it's 3rd and 7 in January. I'm reading every reply because this is a real front office dilemma and fans feel the texture of these choices better than any spreadsheet. My concise read, Mecky Wingo is a good football player, liked in the building, but roster math and special teams reality put him on the bubble. The smartest path is leveraging his upside in a package, if and only if the return upgrades the pass rush without compromising early down control. That's the move that matches the Lions' identity and sends the right signal into a locker room that's already bought in. If you're with me and you want more fast, clear, no-nonsense lines updates like this, tap subscribe, hit the bell, and keep this tab pinned. I'll be here with every twist between now and November 4th, breaking it down with the same honesty I want if I were in your seat at Ford Field.